Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Cavan-Smith. Tonight, Nigeria's president's inauguration for a second term is a very restrained affair. Muhammadu Buhari doesn't even give a speech as he heads into his new mandate. Also, our correspondents head to the north of Paris to hear some of the stories of the thousands of migrants living in makeshift tents there after having struggled their way across Libya to make it into Europe. And we speak to the founder of Little Africa in Paris, who organises tours through the French capital, focusing on the diversity of culture and community that seldom comes to mind when tourists think of the City of Light. But first, Nigeria's president was inaugurated for a second term in a pretty low-key ceremony in Abuja on Wednesday. Muhammadu Buhari was sworn in a very functional affair. The 79-year-old didn't even give a speech. The government said that they kept things simple to keep costs down. The country's economy has stalled, and that is going to be one of several priorities facing Buhari over the next 4 years. Well, Sam Olukoya joins us now from Abuja to talk us through more about what Buhari has ahead of him. Sam, so why no speech? That doesn't particularly bode well for those hoping for big changes. What are you hearing about how Nigerians are taking this utilitarian inauguration?
Well, I think to start with, many Nigerians were surprised. Many were shocked that the ceremony ended without the president making any speech. I think that's the first time we've had an inauguration of this nature where the president left the arena without making any speech. And of course, it has given room to all kinds of speculations. Some people are saying that it's possible he wasn't just fit enough to deliver a speech. I mean, as we know, his battle with quite a number of challenges. Some say maybe it might show a lack of direction on the part of the government. And of course, the government never given an explanation as to why there was no inaugural speech. I mean, this was scheduled to happen, and of course, at the last minute, it was taken off the program.
So, do you have any idea of what is to come from Buhari's second term? We've spoken with you a lot in the past about some of the security problems facing the country. But besides that, what are the issues that are going to make or should make the biggest demands on Buhari's government going forward?
I think one of the key issues which people hardly talk about is that of unemployment. Nigeria's population is growing very rapidly. And then you have so many youths out there who are unemployed, and the number of youths continue to increase. And this has tied to a very large extent into the level of crime rates, the level of criminality we have seen in the country, where you have so many people out there on the streets and they don't have jobs. So that would be one of the challenges, to provide jobs for these people. Secondly, there is a problem of infrastructure. Most of our infrastructure are in a state of complete disrepair. Electricity is not working. I mean, we don't have electricity. Sometimes you have, for example, I think I'm just having electricity for the first time in about 4 days. So that kind of problem, it doesn't move industries forward. The roads are in very bad state. So these are some of the problems. And then we talk of corruption also. We still have a high degree of corruption in the country. So he will have to tackle these problems. And I think his ability to take care, to frontally confront some of these problems may determine whether or not he will succeed at the end of 4 years.
Thanks very much. Sam Olukoya there for us in Abuja. Well, Nigeria has one of the world's highest kidnap for ransom rates, from insurgents in the northeast to bandits in the northwest to militants in the oil-rich south and criminal gangs in Lagos. All kinds of groups around the country turn to abductions for cash, a real challenge for President Buhari going forward. This nationwide security issue has been promised to be a priority. France 24's Anna Cunningham tells us more.
The Lagos Anti-Kidnapping Squad formed over a decade ago, patrols the streets trying to avert kidnappings. But it's an operation that has been criticised for poor logistics and a lack of manpower, alongside a wider mistrust in the police, an image they want to change.
We want the people to have confidence in the police, believe in the police, and continue to trust us. As soon as we have certain information, involve us at the initial stage. We have all it takes to respond accordingly.
Over the years, wealthy Nigerians, businessmen, foreigners and politicians have all been targets. Kidnapping for ransom is a lucrative business, and rarely is it spontaneous.
People don't just go and kidnap this person. These people work based on information. They know, most time they know who they want to kidnap, they know why they want to kidnap the person. But yes, that's random for the sake of money or other reasons, or even for political reasons.
Running a security business across 36 states was not how Roy envisaged his retirement from the army, but his expertise has kept him in demand. Now he wants a tougher approach.
We need to immediately create a legal system that will not take through the rigmarole of all these judicial processes. It will get evidence and initiate justice within the shortest time. That will help us.
The death penalty for kidnapping exists in several states, yet abductions continue. Security remains one of the biggest issues President Buhari has to face as he starts his second term in office.
Now, Eritrea is due to be removed from the US's list of countries deemed not to be cooperating fully with US counterterrorism efforts. It's one of the world's most closed nations, but the UN Security Council lifted sanctions on the country last year after it restored ties with Ethiopia. Well, here in Paris, many Ethiopians can be found in huge migrant camps that have sprung up around the city. People living there have often struggled through horrific journeys to make it to Europe, only to find themselves in dire living conditions in one of the richest cities on the continent. Nicolas Chemin and Sadia Manjo report.
In 2015, many refugees and migrants were living in central Paris under the railway. In 2018, they had to move under this bridge on the edge of the capital. In 2019, they are still further out by the noisy and polluted ring road, where no residents will complain about their presence. The trend is clear, always further away from the city centre. Here, Porte d'Aubervilliers, on the border between Paris and the poor northern suburbs, there are many Eritreans. They have fled a country where the same president has ruled a one-party regime for nearly 3 decades. The refugees live next to piles of rubbish in a makeshift camp.
Look here, it's very dirty. We sleep here, one person will sleep here. This animal does not sleep here, animal.
All the Eritreans we met had fled via Libya and then reached Italy in frail boats before coming to France. Some of them have been given temporary papers, but they still end up here, and they have lost all hope.
The French government is inhumane. Frankly, it's better if they send me back to Eritrea. I don't want to die here. It's better if I can die where my family is.
French authorities said they had already provided lodgings or dormitories for 2,000 migrants since January. But economic misery and violation of human rights in many countries means Europe is still attractive. Last year, the official number of asylum seekers in the Paris region went up by 63%.
Now, Paris has one of the largest population of black people in Europe, and the vast majority are of African heritage. French colonialism in West and North Africa has created a vibrant bond between the two continents, particularly here. But that face of Paris, those diverse parts of the city, are seldom what comes to mind when tourists arrive. Well, Jacqueline Gompi has published the City Guide to Africa in Paris, and she offers curated tours in the city focusing on African culture that weaves through it. So she joins me now. Jacqueline, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Georgia, for having me.
So first of all, why did you see a need for, or an opening or a desire for tours focusing on Africa in Paris?
First of all, the idea was to give an explanation to the millions of tourists coming every year to Paris, the most visited city in the world, and not always wondering why there are so many black people in Paris. And I realized that there are several, initiatives, highlighting the African presence, black presence in Paris, but not really the African presence and the culture and where are the different districts. So it was one way to let them know, why there is this strong African black presence in France, but also to show them what African descent have best to offer to them, and that they can see, and bring to their home, when they come to Paris. One of the reasons is, of course, shopping. So that was the two main reasons.
And so where do you take people? What are you showing them?
So we have one tour in the 18th district of La Goutte d'Or, and basically we take them first to learn more about the history of the African presence in that neighborhood, and we bring them to see the different fashion designer, the youngest fashion designer scene, Afro-Parisian, such as one that I'm wearing right now, and also to see the different fabrics with African textile culture that has the continent, and we also take them to discover the different ingredients for African food.
And is there anything different about the African community or African heritage community in Paris than the community of any other foreign demographic living in the city?
If there is something different.
Is there anything specific or unique about the African demographic in Paris compared to any other foreign communities living in the city?
I think that something that makes it very specific is that the African presence in France, it's for many centuries. For example, there is one exhibition actually at one famous museum that shows you that there we have had several people coming from the Caribbean and from the continent also who started to live in Paris many before more before the African independences. So it's really interesting to see where those people were coming, living, having jobs, having high position, and that those prints you can find them on some facade, on some metro stop station, and also on some street signs.
So they're part of the city's history.
They're part of the city's history.
And just very quickly, you also are using this as a foundation to start training guides in Africa. Just very quickly tell us about that.
Yeah, so basically the company, one of her mission is also to educate, and we engage some of her skills to try now to give back and to train to the youth. For example, how it's possible to tell your story in a city where probably it can be controversial, but there is a way also to prove that there is a sustainable economic model for that, and without, So there is a way now we launch a training program to train the youth people of the continent, but also in France, to build itineraries based on specific tours.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline, for coming in. So Africa in Paris, if you want to see another side of the City of Life, do reach out to her. Well, that, though, is where we're going to have to leave it now for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.